This is the nuclear alert siren in Cape Town. These test runs are conducted at least once annually.
This is only a test. There is no need to take any action. This is only a test.
The reason why I'm showing you this is because I want to tell you about one of the most successful terror attacks on a nuclear plant ever. 40 years ago, on 17 December 1982, Rodney Wilkinson planted 4 bombs inside the nuclear Kuberg power station close to Cape Town in the Western Cape province of South Africa and rode to safety on a bicycle. The story of this attack rarely comes up, but when it does, Rodney claims the story gets told as some kind of hippie prank that succeeded against the odds. But first, who is Rodney? There is no Wikipedia page for Rodney, so can the wiki bros please get to work on that. Here's what we know. Rodney was a former South African national fencing champion. He represented South Africa at international events. He dropped out at the University of Cape Town without completing his studies in building science and politics. He then ended up working at Kuberg during the construction phase of the nuclear plant. Somehow he managed to avoid being subject to a background check. They would have discovered that he had a record of deserting while he was in the army and having anti-nuclear sentiments if they did the background check. The hippie prank view makes sense if you think about what kind of luck this man had. So after he successfully infiltrated the Kuberg plant, his then girlfriend convinced him to steal the blueprints of the plant, and that's exactly what he did. He then took the stolen blueprints to the newly independent Zimbabwe, where he made contact with the armed wing of the ANC. The ANC at the time knew that they have already been infiltrated by the South African intelligence service, so they immediately suspected this guy of being a spy. Therefore, the ANC put him through a vetting process and handed over his blueprints to Soviet and Western allies to investigate the authenticity of the blueprint. At the time, the ANC already lost one agent charged with nuclear espionage, so it was kind of strange that this guy pitched up at one of their safe houses or whatever it was, pitching attack on a nuclear installation. The ANC then invited Rodney to perform the attack himself. At first he declined, but he eventually accepted the role. The ANC told Rodney to meet up with a handler in Swaziland that would train him in the handling of explosives as well as help plan the attack. Because Rodney was a citizen forced non-commissioner officer in the South African Defence Force, the ANC didn't even need to train him. Swaziland was a decent location because gambling was banned in South Africa, so many South Africans crossed the border to gamble in Swaziland. Here you can see an example of the explosives that was being used. The ANC used limpet mines in the attack on Kuberg. The one here in the picture was recovered by the South African Defence Force before it could be used to do any real damage. While in Swaziland, Rodney and his handler, codenamed Dolphin, agreed on a strategy designed to maximize embarrassment to the South African government. The mines were meant to be placed on 2 of the reactor heads as well as one of the control rooms and a containment building, designed to do as much damage as possible to the plant. They figured because the reactor heads were made of 110 tons of steel, the mines wouldn't really do much damage, but it would make for good PR. Even the date of the explosives going off was deliberately selected. The explosives were meant to go off on the 16th of December, which marked the anniversary of the Battle of Bloedrivier, known at the time as Tangaan's Day or the Day of the Vow. Today it's the Day of Reconciliation. This attack sits on number 2 of the ANC's all-time greatest achievements during the armed struggle period. Number 1 was the Sasol bombing and number 3 was the controversial and bloody Church Street bombing. But this attack wasn't really about the ANC. They had claiming responsibility basically for an attack that was done by someone that wasn't even a typical ANC cadre. Looking in from the outside, from my point of view, the only thing I can really say the ANC provided was some faulty explosives. So you're probably wondering, how close were we actually to a nuclear disaster? Rodney was unaware of this, but nuclear rods that were supposed to fuel the nuclear plant had already been moved to the plant, but they were at least still in storage. So luckily to all of us, including the rest of the planet, those didn't get damaged. For the armed wing of the ANC, nearly destroying the city of Cape Town is a highlight. Highly regarded as one of the best cities in the world, if not the best city. The commissioning of the plant was delayed by 18 months, costing the Apartheid government roughly 450 to 500 billion rand in damages at the time. He then escaped via a domestic flight to Joburg, where he was driven to the border of Swaziland. How he was driven to the border is not clear. Some sources suggest he was driven on a bicycle to the border, hopped on a different bicycle and crossed the border, while other sources suggest he was driven by car and then got on a bicycle at the border. and crossed over into exile on the bicycle. What we do know is after that he ended up in England where he got married to his then girlfriend. Prior to the explosives going off, the ANC took responsibility for the attack prematurely because an electrical fire broke out on the facility that made it into the news, and the ANC president, which made the public comments, were informed of the operation but wasn't given any details. Even a security scare couldn't stop Rodney from performing his bombing of Kuberg nuclear plant. He got away with smuggling bombs onto the nuclear plant. He got away with smuggling the blueprints of the plant over the border to Zimbabwe. He got away with actually performing this bombing. He dodged the security checks and balances that were supposed to be performed on him to work at this most top secret facility. He went AWOL as a soldier on active duty in a conflict zone and didn't get punished for that either. Life just works out for Rodney. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe.